Greetings, welcome back to the channel. Sorry it's been a while since I posted any content. Those of you who saw the last video I put up before I actually took it down will know that I had planned to be moving, but things have changed. So we're back up and running. I've reorganised the studio, reorganised my lighting, etc, etc. And we've got a new PC case review to do, so let's get on with it. Okay, so today's case is a Neutron Lab Lunar 3702W. This is another white case, and I'm hoping this one's not going to be as much of a disappointment as the last two were. Neutron Lab is actually exclusive to eBuyer, who are based here in the UK, with their current Black Friday deals on. Including shipping, well, excluding shipping, this is just under £30. It's normally around about £36, but I think it's down to about £29 now with the Black Friday deals, which at the time of shooting are still on. So I will put a link to the eBuyer listing down below. So I'll put a link to their page for this particular product. And normally with eBuyer, there's about £6 shipping if it's under carriage paid. So at the current Black Friday prices, it's about £35 including shipping. Without the Black Friday deals, it's about £42, £43 including shipping. So normal prices, it's slightly above what I would normally pay for a budget gaming case. But with the current deals, it's within my normal remit of what I normally review. So let's get the box open and have a look at the case. Okay, first glance, before I even get it out of the box, it looks quite large. It looks round about a similar sort of size to maybe an NZXT H500 size-wise. So let's put that down there. Now that is a good idea. They've actually packaged, when they've packaged it, they've put some of this thick foam on the side of the case where the tempered glass panel is, to protect it during shipping, just in case anything hits the side of the box. It doesn't pierce the box and shatter the panel, it hits the foam first. Very good idea, which other case manufacturers would follow suit when they're doing tempered glass side panels. Then you've got your usual polystyrene top and bottom. So take the plastic bag off. First glance on the bottom, and we'll show this on the side cam. It has one of those clip-in dust filters, but instead of just being underneath where the PSU would be, it actually covers the entire bottom of the case. And it is, like I say, it's one of them clip-in ones, so it has little tabs all the way around the base that the dust filter clips into. But at least it has a dust filter. So we'll carry on getting the box open. So remove the other polystyrene and the bag. So on the top we have magnetic dust filter in white. When we look underneath, we can see rails. It will take two fans or a double radiator, either in 120mm or 140mm width. So you can either have a 240 or a 280mm rad in the top. Across the top we have one USB 3, two USB 2s, a headphone and mic, power switch. This isn't a reset switch, it's an actual LED switch, because the case comes with an LED fan from Recollection. Just put that dust filter back on the top there. So we will go into the back, just held on by two thumb screws. Oh, and they are captive. And The removal is very similar to a H100. Has tiny little tangs here and here. They clip into the case here and here, and then it just comes off. So we'll drop that down to one side for now. Okay, so in the back, yes. So we have one LED fan in the back, which unfortunately is powered by Molex for its speed control. There is no PWM control on it. However, it does have, it's ARGB, so it's the 5 volt 3 pin addressable RGB on the controller for that, which comes obviously off of that LED button on the top. And then we've got obviously USB, HD audio, USB 3, and that actual LED switch on the front has been repurposed from the reset switch to be the colour switcher for the LED. So if you wanted to take that fan out completely, put one in that would be, say, a 12 volt 4 pin RGB, you could then repurpose the reset switch back to the reset port on your motherboard and lose this and lose all of this spaghetti here. So other than that, that's the back. So there's the user manual. In the base here, we have a space for one 3.5 inch drive, although I think you might be able to take the cage off. I think it's accessible by the screws that hold it in place are accessible by removing that dust filter underneath. You could take that out and possibly mount a 2.5 inch drive in there as well. So in the back, we've got the usual 7 vents or 7 openings, 120mm fan opening, power supply opening. Power supply for this will go in through the back entrance rather than a plate coming off the back and then it's sliding in there. Space wise for a power supply, there's not much. You couldn't put an extremely long power supply into this because yeah, you'd be running out of space unless you completely removed the hard drive bay, and then you'd have all of this space. Right, so let's go around to the business end, which again is held in place with 2 captive thumb screws, and again slides in the front, locks back, and it is tempered glass. So I'm going to be extremely careful and put that in the box. So now we're coming to the business side. As you can see, it's all white inside, which makes me wonder why they bothered to put a black fan in the back of this, rather than putting a white fan in. So yes, so we've got nice large opening in the back here. We've got 6 pre-installed standoffs for an ATX board. Obviously the 2 bottom ones, if you were using a micro ATX board, you'd have to move them up. Nice big openings across the top for your cables to come through for your EPS and maybe fans, etc. And some nice large openings here for your 24 pin to come through. In the basement, we have 3 nice large holes here for your bottom cables to come up. You've also got one further forward for your PCIe cable for your graphics card to come up through. So rather than running it from, say, the back here and round, or from one of the rear openings in the shroud and up, you could run your cable up and then run it up through the front. The shroud itself is vented, and it does have some screw mounts in it, and what they're for I'm not entirely sure. It looks like they're actually mountings for fans. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, you've actually got fan mountings there and AIO mountings. Why you put an AIO down the bottom, I don't know, because you wouldn't, because you'd want the radiator above the pump combo. So now, as you can see, it does have an opening here in the power supply shroud, something I've never been a fan of. So if you were to build in this case, you would certainly want to use a white power supply, something along the lines of, say, maybe a Corsair CX750, something like that, but the white version. Like I said, in the top you've got 240 or 280 for an AIO or fans. In the front you have an opening for either a 240 or a 360mm rad. At a push you might get a 420 in there, but it'd be a real push. A 360 would probably be the better option, but you could just go for a 240 and stop kind of here and leave the bottom open. So because all your connections are mounted along the side of the back of the case here, the front itself has no connections to it. So you can just, now it's got a little pull handle, top and bottom. So choose one, put your hand in and give it a good tug, and the front comes away. As you can see on the front, I don't know how well the camera's picking that up, you have venting down the side, and unlike the NZXT H500, this has venting down both sides, whereas that case, I know from experience because I'm using one in my main rig, that only has venting down one side. So this actually has better front venting than an NZXT case. You then have another dust filter behind that front panel. Now this isn't magnetic, it isn't, well it is magnetic, but it's held in place top and bottom with a couple of little hex head screws. So I'm assuming you could probably remove those screws and live without them, because the mesh is going to be held in place by A, the magnets, and B, that front panel. Let's get my screwdriver and we'll remove that and see what the access is like inside. It'll also tell us how strong the magnets are when I take both the screws out. Right, so that's both the screws out and it's held in place. So we'll take that off. As you can see, there's your openings for your 120/140mm fans / radiator. So this is obviously a generic case, because here's openings for cables that would normally come through from the front as well, and obviously you would normally have, if there were front panel mounted switches and sockets, the cables would come through here and go out the back of here. So it's obviously maybe a generic frame, but it works well. Obviously these are all your holes for all the punch through plugs for the front panel. But all in all, that's a pretty good design. So yeah, what you probably end up doing if you put a 360 in, you probably route all your fans to have all their cables coming maybe through the central one, going to a central controller, especially if you were using RGB fans. Let's put this back in. Ooh, that magnet's actually quite strong. Surprising for a quote-unquote cheap case. I think I'd actually probably still use this, even though it's magnetic, I would probably still use the screws. Just to make doubly sure. And then and there we go. So all in all, in my opinion, one thing I forgot to mention, cable management space, which was my big gripe on the other two white cases. This has the same sort of cable management space as a H500. It's a good 3/4 of an inch to an inch behind the motherboard tray for managing your cables, so plenty of space behind there. Like I said, because most people nowadays don't put a 3.5 inch spinning hard drive into their cases. They normally have maybe an SSD, a large SSD for mass storage, and maybe an M.2 drive mounted to the motherboard as their boot drive. So you could probably take that drive cage out completely. That will give you your space for hiding additional cables off of a non-modular power supply. If you've got a modular power supply, it doesn't really matter, because you're only going to be plugging in cables that you're actually using. One thing I did forget to mention, and I'll just switch camera angles again. On the back here, we actually have a removable tray for mounting two 2.5-inch drives, be they spindly mechanical drives like laptop size drives, or 2.5-inch SSDs, SATA SSDs. And that basically, it's got a couple of little lugs on it, as you can see there, and they basically slot into there, and then you have captive thumb screw that screws into what is effectively a motherboard standoff, but screwed in from this side. So that screws into there, and that holds your two SSDs in place. So all in all, I think this is a very, very good case for its price point. Just one thing I want to double check. Number of tie downs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 tie down points in the back of this case. That's unheard of in a case of this price point, to have that many tie down points for cable management, and like I say, having the space for cable management as well. I think I'm going to really enjoy doing a build in this case in the future. I have actually bought a Corsair CX750F RGB white power supply, fully modular, 80 plus bronze rated, and that's going to be for this case. And because the top of that power supply shroud is grilled, so you can see through it, I'm actually going to go with Graham from Adamant IT, his philosophy, and mount it fan side up so you can see the RGB through that grill. Obviously dependent on the length of the cables that come with it, and whether or not when the power supply is reversed for where the cables have to plug into it, whether they'll reach to their respective places within the case. If not, then it may be a case of it'll be mounted fan side down, but you'll get RGB underglow underneath the tower. Speaking of which, for space, the feet themselves, I don't know, they're probably about 3/4 of an inch, so about 18 millimeters tall, the feet. So you've got airflow underneath the case. So yeah. So I'm actually quite impressed for this price point, even at full price, which is about £35. This is an extremely good budget gaming case with plenty of cable management space, plenty of tie down points, tempered glass, clear tempered glass, not tinted, and ventilation both sides on the intake. So you definitely want to be putting, even if you're just using fans, they'd want to go on the inside of this front mounting grill. You wouldn't want to put them between the grill and the front of the case because you choke the fans. Personally speaking, I would go for a 360mm rad in this case. I'd get rid of the drive cage at the bottom, use say Samsung Evo 1TB for your mass storage, and stick a 0.5 TB M.2 NVMe drive in as your boot drive, and get rid of 3.5-inch drives altogether. So I'd lose that drive cage to gain space for the thickness of the rad and the fans, because by the time you've got the rad and the fans together, you're talking 1.5 inches to 2 inches taken up. The big question I know people are going to ask is, how big a GPU can I put in? Now, the specs do say from the PCIe mounting point to the front of the case, 330mm. I would hazard a guess you don't want to be putting anything longer than really a maximum of 280mm long graphics card into this to allow for a radiator and fans in the front of the case. Anything longer than that, you're going to get interference between the two. Obviously, you could go shorter. You know, if you were doing a budget build with say something like a 1050 Ti, which doesn't even need PCIe power because it draws all its power through the slot on the motherboard. And they're normally only about 150, 180mm long, so you're not going to have any interference issues. However, if you were trying to build sort of like a medium high-end gaming rig with something like I don't know, an RTX 2060 or something like that, which is a relatively long card, it will probably come out to about here. It would probably come sort of level with maybe the end of the shroud, and then that gives you the space from the end of the shroud here, where there's a gap, to the radiator and fans. It'd give you that breathing space between the two items in the case. So overall, if the other cases got a 3 and a 4 out of 10, I would say, just because of this hole here that I'm not a fan of, and the fact that the shroud could do with maybe being a little bit longer, maybe another inch on the shroud, and the fact that we don't have rubber grommets in all the openings where cables come through, I would probably give this case an 8 out of 10. So, overall, in my opinion, a really good case for its price point. If you're looking for a white case with good features and good airflow, I would say get one of these. Like I said, I will put a link to the eBuyer webpage for this particular product in the description below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Really does help, put traffic towards my YouTube channel. Also, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to let you know when more video goes up. Like I say, it should be more regular now that things are kind of getting back to normal. So yeah, have yourself a nice weekend. For my viewers in the States, hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.